Go ahead, Bob.
Good evening, trustees, senior staff, and Limestone District School Board's Education Policy and Operations Committee of the whole. We begin tonight's meeting with the land acknowledgement, and Trustee Hutchin has his mouth right back.
The Limestone District School Board is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. We acknowledge their enduring presence on this land, as well as the presence of Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across Turtle Island. We honor their cultures and celebrate their commitment to this land. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to note that all trustees are present, and we do have regrets from our student trustee, Kolosov. But everyone else is expected to be here this evening. Before we get right into the meet, I just want to welcome everybody back. I know you met in August, but it's good to see you all, and hope you had a wonderful summer. And I do want to recognize that the schools are back and up and running, and all the feedback that I'm getting from the little ones that go to Limestone in my family is that it's great. So that's a good start for the year. So I'll call this meeting to order. And if you've all had a chance to look at the agenda, I would ask the trustee to motion to move. Thank you, Trustee McGregor. All right, and any objections? Seeing none, it's approved. Great. At this particular time, I would ask any of the trustees if there's any conflicts of interest. And if there is, for any reason, if you just identify what part of the agenda so that we could just excuse you at that part. Seeing none, we'll just move along. So tonight, we have no presentations. Reports for action. There are no reports for action this evening. But we do have reports for information, which is always exciting. So 6.1, we have See Yourself in Limestone Communication Strategy 2025-2026. And we have our communication consultants, Mandy Crothers and Allison Grange. And I would turn the time over.
Good evening, trustees. I am Allison Grange, and this is Maddie Crothers, and we are the two-part communications team here at Limestone. And we are excited today to talk to you about the See Yourself in Limestone communication strategy that we have planned for this upcoming school year. Our team continues to be committed to enhancing communication and engagement with families, education, and community partners, and the broader public. This evening, we'll provide an overview of key updates, as well as some background as to where we came from and where we're moving towards.
So in August in 2024, we launched a full redesign of all of our websites across the district. It was reflecting our commitment to delivering high quality resources to our various school audiences, as well as communication tools for each of our communities. And so the key enhancements included, and Shauna, I might just get you to press play on, a unified accessible design with translation built in, improved user experience through intuitive and user-friendly design, compatible across all devices with focus on mobile optimization, and updated relevant content which tailored to the needs of our families, students, and the community members. We've received great feedback over the last year, both from the families and students from a public perspective, as well from staff from an internal perspective, managing the websites in the back end. A big change for this year are moving our school newsletters from a third-party platform to being hosted directly on our school websites. So this change brings several benefits, including it's a very familiar platform. So schools, website administrators, and administration are comfortable with the platform. So instead of reducing the learning curve of learning a new tool, it ensures that newsletters meet accessibility standards. So making content more inclusive and easier to navigate. And newsletters can be translated, as I mentioned earlier, into families' preferred language, helping us better serve our diverse schools across our district. This approach also centralizes the content in one place, making it easier to transfer or preserve or archive the content in the future. This change strengthens our communication efforts, increases consistency across all the schools, as well as being more cost effective and sustainable in the long term.
Okay, so following the launch of the multi-year strategic plan last year, 2024-2025, our communications team developed a comprehensive suite of branded materials to bring the plan to life across the district. These materials were designed to reflect and reinforce our intention, our mission, vision, values, and have been distributed to schools across the district. The updated assets include, these are 2 posters that you may see if you're in schools that have been shared with all schools. And then we also have things like these banner ups that are behind us, as well as many other items like standardized communication templates for both school and district level use. Obviously, the refresh website design, presentation decks, social media templates, and video campaigns to ensure consistent messaging across all platforms. This strategy helped to embed the strategic plan into everyday communication and fostered a stronger sense of identity and alignment across the system. That was our hope. And so we have this, but you can also see things here. So for the focus for this year is continuing to build awareness and alignment across the system, specifically as it relates to the strategic plan. And so our strategic theme is See Yourself in Limestone. So that has been a slogan of the boards for several years now. We're focusing on that, but we're also focusing on the intention. So making a positive difference in the lives of every student in every classroom in every school. So those 2 things are really what we're trying to build into all of our messaging and all of our communications. So our targeted efforts for this year will be on, and some of these we have done previously, but some are new. So student and staff recruitment and retention and expanded opportunities program. So the communications team will collaborate closely with each area team to develop tailored campaigns that align with important milestones and timelines. For example, we'll support kindergarten registration in January and staff recruitment efforts in the spring, because this is the timelines that we have learned are work the best for registration and recruitment. These campaigns will help strengthen the awareness, engagement, and alignment across the system while continuing to reflect the values and direction of the strategic plan. Everything will be directed back to the strategic plan. Any sort of action that we do, that is what we are continually focusing on. In saying that, so this year with the See Yourself in Limestone theme, we are trying to focus on, and we're planning on, sharing real life stories from students and staff to help highlight how they see themselves in Limestone. So our thoughts are doing that through video, the other means, posters, advertisements, social media, just all sorts of avenues, but having the story be a part of that. So this is a campaign highlight. This is something that we started working on, 2 years ago now, I suppose, but it has grown over the last little while, is our French teacher recruitment campaign. And so the goals from that campaign has been to highlight the impact of French educators in our system, promote Limestone as a supportive and rewarding place to teach. And so we've been doing that through some new means. We have been, well, I'll show you in a second here, a video. One of our most engaging elements was a video featuring students writing heartfelt thank you notes to their French teachers. The teachers then read the notes aloud on camera. They hadn't seen them before, creating an authentic and emotional moment that highlighted the deep connections between students and educators. So this video has been widely shared on social media, promoted on our website, and will continue to be featured and expanded upon this year as part of our ongoing recruitment efforts. This is specifically for French teacher recruitment, but we wanted to share it as a good example. To reach prospective candidates, we use a mix of communications channels. So we use all sorts of different things: Indeed, LinkedIn, other job boards, recruitment fairs. And so we're learning this as we go. So we're going to share oh yes, I also have here. So I put social media to reach broader audiences and drive engagement, website updates to provide clear, accessible information, and video storytelling. So I'm going to share with you the video that we launched probably May or June last year.
I feel a bit nervous. There we go.
Un message que je veux partager avec Madame McIntosh est qu'elle est la meilleure professeure du monde et je veux dire merci pour être notre professeur. La chose que j'aime le plus de Madame McIntosh, c'est qu'elle toujours montre pour nous quelque chose de différent.
Chère Madame Crew, mon aspect préféré de mon prof de français est qu'elle est très sportive et elle me fait sentir capable.
Chère Madame Ducharme, l'école est difficile, mais vous avez fait le meilleur effort possible pour que nous sentions saufs, aimés et respectés.
Chère Madame Scott, merci d'être une prof géniale. J'aime votre façon d'enseigner et j'adore nos nombreuses sorties scolaires qui maintenant inventent ce que nous apprenons à l'école.
Elle est très gentille, elle m'encourage et elle est ma enseignante préférée.
Apprendre le français, c'est important pour moi parce que quand je vais pour faire le ski au Québec, je peux parler en français à les citoyennes.
J'apprécie que vous savez que l'école n'est pas toujours facile et que vous faites tout dans vos pouvoirs pour que je peux faire mon mieux.
Sorry, can I take a second? Oh, so sweet.
Et j'aime quand on fait des débats dans la classe. Mon préféré débat était l'un qu'on a fait hier à propos de la Moyen-Âge.
Those are very sweet.
Chère Madame Crew, merci de m'avoir aidé à améliorer mon français et de m'avoir aidé à élargir mon vocabulaire. Tu es un professeur fantastique.
Oh, c'est trop gentil.
It's so sweet!
Tu me fais sentir bienvenue, aimée et vue dans la classe et c'est sûrement la même pour chaque élève.
C'est qu'elle toujours est très gentille et créative.
Distrait.
Elle est la meilleure professeure dans le Limestone District School Board. Je suis tellement chanceuse que Madame McIntosh est mon enseignante.
Thank you. How lucky am I?
So anyway, that's an example of the types of videos we would like to put together for other areas as well. So continuing with French teachers. So staff in general, staff stories, as well as expanded opportunities. There's a huge opportunity with sharing all of the success for both the staff and the students for expanded opportunities. So this campaign, our plan is that this campaign will feature all three focus areas. So the student registration, staff recruitment, expanded opportunities, and use a mix of paid and unpaid media to reach the audiences. By building on the success of last year's efforts, we aim to further strengthen our recruitment efforts and continue celebrating the inspiring stories of students and staff in Limestone.
And so as Allison's mentioned, we'll work closely with senior staff to develop communications plan for the entire year grounded in the strategic plan, in addition to providing communication support for the various other projects that come up over the year, for example, the student census or the corporate services survey that's coming up. And so this coordinated approach will help us ensure consistent messaging and alignment with all of our priorities and effective engagement with our audiences that we're working with. And then a key shift this year is putting a stronger emphasis on monitoring and evaluation for each of the campaigns and all the communications that we do. So we're going to place a greater focus on collecting meaningful data. So that's clicks, likes, comments, shares, views, open rates, survey responses if we're doing surveys, and more. And so this data will allow us to effectively measure our efforts and optimize the resources that we have available so we can make informed decisions sort of as we go throughout the year to make the most impact across our system. That we'll take any questions.
Thank you very, very much. Hey, Trustee Morning?
The real life stories are really, really good. And the little boy who actually looked up when he was giving his friends was fabulous. But I'm wondering how widespread is this video and what have you done to protect privacy?
Sure, yes. So 2 questions. How widespread? So this particular video we had filmed, I think, at 2 or 3 schools. Ideally, when we make videos, we are going to be all over the board. And if we're going to, we have been very focused on the accessibility of the fact that certain schools are further away than others. And we will do whatever we can to be able to actually get there or do videos even online if we can. In terms of privacy, so every student does, or every family does sign a media consent form at the beginning of the school year. But for all of these extra videos, we have sent another form home to families to say that this is what we're doing, this is what it's for, this is where you may see it. And so they have a choice whether they want to do that or not. And so there is a second signed consent.
But the video doesn't actually go beyond Limestone?
Sorry. Oh, that's what it means. Okay. So it is shared on the Limestone District School Board's website, but it's also shared on social media. It is promoted, so it could be pushed to various areas beyond the Limestone board. Yeah, beyond the people that follow us too. So others who may not see this previously. So it does. There is a chance that it is spread.
Gotcha.
Further and further.
Thank you.
You. Trustee Utan?
Great presentation, thank you. Just wondering, are you venturing into Quebec to do some recruitment of French teachers or French-speaking people?
Yes. So what there's a bit of a tricky thing with promoting. Okay. I'm trying to think of the different areas here. So say we were promoting on social media. We have to, because it's for recruitment, it's my understanding, we have to promote throughout Canada. There's specific rules around that where you can't be super specific as to where you are advertising. And so that is one area. Other areas, I'm just trying to think. We also are focusing on different universities that have the French teaching programming. And I would have to connect more with HR about Quebec specifically. I don't know the details around what is being done from their end, but it's definitely something that we're keeping in mind, see if we can connect with across the country.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, if I can.
Sure, absolutely.
Obviously, if they're qualified, in fact, they do have to get certified by the Ontario College of Teachers. And so this one right now is really kind of focused on Ontario universities where there are graduates. That being said, though, I think that does provide another opportunity. And one of the things we've done is every time the Kingston Family Military Resource Center has their Welcome to Kingston Day in the spring, it actually quite frequently conflicts sometimes with one of the Pride Parades because it's typically a Saturday in June. Then we will go there and actually try to engage with people because oftentimes there's somebody who's in the services who is coming, but they may have a partner who is looking for employment, and that's an opportunity for us to engage in conversations with them. And they're coming from all over the country, and they're coming here primarily because of the person who's in the military. But there is a partner who may not be in the military and is looking for work to do. So we've kind of found some success trying to engage people through events like that. But one of the things we're trying to do is also promote these in geographic locations in faculty's event, for example. Right, and promoting it through social media, so we're hitting an audience that we're wanting to see this at a particular moment.
Thanks. Okay. Trustee Scott.
I'm just curious, what social mediums are you utilizing?
Yes, so for social media, so we mainly use Instagram and Facebook. We also use LinkedIn. We could do a little more with LinkedIn. We don't typically use X at this point. I would say that's it.
Well, we used X, we moved away from X starting of last school year, so fall of 2024, we sort of pulled back on X. We still have it for monitoring purposes, but we're not actively posting content onto it.
I just know Queens, my full-time job at Queens,
Yeah.
we get a lot of views from university students on Reddit.
Oh, on Reddit, yes, that's
It's
true.
really not advertising on Reddit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we get
Yes.
quite a few on that. That's probably,
That's true.
for that,
Yes.
the role I play there, we get the most
Yeah.
views from Reddit.
That's a good thought too. Yep. Yep. Thank you.
Trustee Ely?
No more than a question because I don't expect an answer right away. But it was just a feel good, like pull you in recruitment video that I mean, I'm not a French teacher, but I feel like it hits the mark. I'm just wondering if it would be beneficial to do something similar to that right around the time that kindergarten registration is opening up for families that have a choice in this region and they could choose Limestone.
Yes. So, yes. So, oh yeah, first of all, we do have one, but that was from last year. But that is the idea with this this updated campaign. Our plan is to have students, we didn't really talk about that, have students talk about what their experience is like in Limestone. And some of the best things come out of things that aren't always planned super well. And that's what happened with the last video. I can share it with you afterward, but we kind of just said to students, what do you like about your class? What do you like about school? And they just had the best answers. It was, you couldn't ask for anything better. And so that's exactly it. We want to try to have stories from all ages, experiences from all ages, and then staff too.
Perhaps parents.
We could maybe do parents. Yeah, that's.
I you know, as a mother, perhaps I would be inclined to listen to another mother.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good thought.
Student trustees, do you have any questions or comments? No? Trustee Elliott.
Thanks for the report. Do you do the videos yourselves, or are you outsourcing to another company to do that?
So good question. Things have gotten easier, I'd say, now that technology is getting better. So we do all of our videos now in-house with a phone, with a cell phone, and with an iPhone. And we do all of our editing just in some software that we have, and we pull different resources that we have. We used to have to outsource videos, but we don't do that anymore.
We're very lucky in that way because Allison is very talented, and if we had to outsource those videos, it would be very expensive and probably not necessarily possible at this degree. We have much more to do.
Transferable skills.
Sorry if I could add to that though, having been the feature of some of these videos, I would say that they do wonderful work with mediocre material.
My other question, maybe a little bit trickier. I wasn't thinking of this question originally, but you mentioned the new website makes it easier to archive things. Mm-hmm. Are there any rules around like keeping articles or web pages for a certain number of years? Like you keep financial things for 7 years.
Yes.
Is there anything related to that online?
So Limestone does have a retention schedule and our website does fall under that. And so I believe it's 8 years for communication materials. Getting a nod there. It depends on which material it is, but I believe it's 8 years. So we'd have to, if we were moving on to new one, we take screenshots of all of our pages and continue.
Awesome, thank you.
Trustee Neal.
Yeah, I taught high school for 30 years and taught at GSS in Gamnoquay. And one of the wonderful things that happened there was that the Playhouse, we were a block away from the Playhouse, and they set up an idea that if I got my students to fill out with a blank date, the parental permission form, that they, anytime a bus canceled, going to a play, something like that, they'd call me and say, do you have a class you'd like to bring down to see a play this afternoon? So that, you know, that was a real bonus. And I'm wondering, I don't know if something like that could be done for French immersion students, if something, I don't know how frequently something comes up that allows you to take a class to a French opportunity, but it might be worth looking into.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I think probably we would be better on our end to connect with the French program team because they would have a better understanding as to what is available. I know I don't have a full understanding as to what's available, but that's a good thought that we could pass along.
Great.
Great. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. That was very informative and awesome job. Thank you. So 6.2, we have an update on our food sharing project. Associate Superintendent College's absence. This report will be presented by Superintendent Gillen.
Thank you, and to you, Chair Godkin. I will very briefly review some highlights of the report because the main event are the folks to the right of me that are here to speak with you today. I just want to assure you that the work that we do with the Food Sharing Project is directly linked to our strategic plan, specifically the goal to improve student well-being, sense of belonging, participation, engagement, and class time focused on learning, because we know that hungry students do not learn. And so feeding our students across the district has become a very high priority for us. If you can believe this, and it's, I've been with the board for 31 years, and I've never known it not to have a food sharing project. They've been in the KFL area for 40 years, and the Ontario Student Nutrition Program, which helps guide and shape much of this, has been around for 35 years. Having been a principal, and then having the luxury of working with these fine folks as the role of associate superintendent, I can tell you that there is very few people across our district who are working hard to support students in the Limestone District School Board, as well as our determinants boards as well. I'm pretty sure you're going to hear about START, which is referenced in the report from Andy and Brenda, and we are just really excited. One of the highlights of working with this group is continually working with the nutrition coordinators at the school, who are typically staff members, usually educational assistants and teachers, and the work that they do going above and beyond to ensure that food is ordered, food is ready, food's in the right spot, and then working out magical ways so that students can get the food in a very purposeful manner, but also not centering anybody out. So it really is a wonderful program, and we are so pleased to welcome Andy Mills, who's the executive director for the food sharing program, and Brenda Moore, who many of you will remember as a former principal in Limestone, who is currently the chair of the board. So I will turn it over to these two folks.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Thank you for having us here. We appreciate it. So my name is Andy Mills. I'm the executive director, and we have a short little presentation, and we're happy to answer questions or any clarifications you can. So thank you for the opportunity to present on the food sharing project. Here we go. So as Superintendent Gillen mentioned, we've been around for over 40 years. 2026 marks our 40th year of incorporation as a nonprofit. So it's a long time. We've been running a lot of food. What we do is provide nutritious food and equipment to publicly funded schools across Kingston, Frontenac, and Lennox and Addington. The food and equipment supports in-school breakfast, lunch, and party snack programs, which take a variety of forms at all the different schools in the area. There we go. We provide, okay, technical difficulties. We provide nutritious food because we know, and research tells us, and we kind of know this naturally, that students who eat nutritious food at school are more engaged in their learning, focus better on their tasks, and they have many more positive social interactions throughout the day. You know how you feel if lunch is a little bit late, we all get a little hangry. So imagine a child being asked to do the difficult things we're asking them to do in school without being distracted by a finger stone. Basically how it works, if you're not familiar with it, is that as Superintendent Gillum mentioned, each school has a student nutrition program coordinator who looks after the program at their school, often an EA or a staff member, or it could be a volunteer as well too. They order food from a curated list of food that we provide, which meets nutritional criteria set by the province and in line with the Canada Food Guide. We have an amazing team of volunteers who pack the food, have it delivered to our warehouse, and we pack the food. You see in this one photo, one of our staff members is surrounded by boxes, and so we use these lovely banana boxes, which people at school are quite familiar with. We deliver the food to 88 schools, so that's all publicly funded schools in Kingston, Connington, and Edmonton from the 4 different school boards. That works out to roughly 12,000 meals or snacks every week, 12,000 per more. Along with our traditional in-school program, this past year, I had a slide, I'm sorry I didn't get it in here in time, that we started a new program supported by the National School Food Program. So last year, the federal government announced the National School Food Program, and we received funding to help us launch a new initiative. The initiative is to provide prepared lunches that we call this program Lunches Ready, and it's offering prepared lunches that we deliver to schools, recognizing that students are looking for more robust filling snacks as well. And then so families register their children to receive complete nutritious meals, including fruit and milk, 1 day a week. These meals are prepared by our professional kitchen staff and volunteers in schools. So the combination of the program and the existing student nutrition program that we offer allows students to be able to provide healthy meals in schools, to provide healthy meals to any student who needs nutrition. I'll turn it over to you.
Now that you figured it out. Happy New Year, everyone. I just want to say that on this first day of school. It doesn't matter how many years you're retired. You know, you just remember what day it is. When somebody says, how do you remember that? It's in your DNA, I think. It just never leaves. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Food Sharing Project and to just tell you a little bit more about the impact and what we're dealing with in terms of need. You've probably seen this statistic before, that 1 in 3 families in KFL&A experience food insecurity. Last year it was 1 in 6, and the year before that it was 1 in 9. So despite all of the efforts that food providers across the community are making, we're not making headway. So it's time with the National School Food Program to be able to expand what we offer in school. So we need to move to what I am calling a proper lunch. And that's what we did this year, as Andy was mentioning, with our Lunches Ready program. Kids are telling us that the best food they eat all day is at school. And we know why that is. Every one of us, no matter what our means is, we go to the grocery store and we pick up an item and we say, what? That's not what it was last week. And then you think about high mortgage rates and high rent and a family that we used to say of limited means. We're now talking about families that are in the middle class, and they're having trouble making ends meet. So when we can feed their kids at school, they can use that part of their budget that would have gone to making lunches towards something else, gas in the car to get to work, for example. So it's really important that we recognize that that historical definition that we used to fall back on of who's in need is very different now. There's a lot more kids in need every single year. Last year, we were averaging about $25,000 worth of food going out our door every week. And research tells us that only about one third of Canadian children are eating 5 or more servings of fruit and vegetables a day. And a quarter of the intake of their calories is from food not recommended. So school, under the vision of the National School Food Program, is going to become the place where the nutritional playing field gets leveled. And it won't matter who you are, where you come from, what your family earns, you are all invited to have something to eat at school. And that's a vision. That's what we're working towards. It's not going to be anything that happens overnight. Our Lunch is Ready program, we only did 7 schools once a week. It was 12,000 meals from April to the end of June. But the best we can do right now is staff in, I would say it's about $4 a meal. Just do the math of that. $4 a meal, 5 days a week. Like it blows my mind when I really start thinking about it. So this, as I said, is a shift in thinking. We've got to bring everybody in. We always say with food sharing that there's no stigma, there are no barriers. You need something to eat, you get something to eat. Doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a kid. If you need something to eat, you get something to eat. But we need to go even further than that, because we don't want the fact that a child is accessing food every single day at school to be an issue. Because we're encouraging families to let us feed them. So we want to make sure that schools understand that we want those kids to access that food. And if it's every day, that's awesome. That little one's, that bigger one's going to learn better. We all know that. So that's a really important thing that's coming out of the National School Food Program that we really want to emphasize. And we really appreciate the opportunity to tell you about it so that you can reinforce that message when you're visiting your schools. And it's really helpful to have those voices out there in schools. Another thing that is part of our dream of the National School Food Program is to engage our high school cafeterias that are idle right now in actually feeding their feeder schools. So if we can get some of those cafeterias up and running, and we've looked at Bay Ridge and Frontenac, and there's just vision there. And there might be some infrastructure funding coming from the National School Food Program. It is the opposite of transparent on every level. And I think it's because, I probably shouldn't say this in this space, but because of the provincial government's involved. But that is, so we don't really know, we don't know the amount that's coming, and we don't know if there's a targeted amount for infrastructure. So there may be things that can be facilitated through connections with the school board that will help us create that vision. So it's a very exciting time for us. There's a lot of potential to really make a big difference on the health and well-being of kids. And we really value the position that the Limestone District School Board has at our table, at our board meetings. There's a spot there, and it's a board of directors position, voting and all. So we really thank you as a collective for making that available to us, and we appreciate the guidance that comes from them. Any questions?
Well, yeah, I'll open it to questions. I just want to say that you're both awesome, and and the things that you're doing for our kids, it's even speechless because it's so important. Now I'll open the floor. Trustee Betchen?
Thank you, and I can certainly attest to Chair Godkin's saying that you two are awesome, having sat on that committee for that year. You guys do amazing work and work so hard. And I think the Food Sharing Project is amazing. And I'm wondering if part of it has ever included collaborations with gardens, like community gardens, or having any of the grow gardens back in our schools and that sort of thing to like really enhance that lesson about local food and nutrition and all of that. Just curious about that.
There's certainly potential for those connections to happen through the National School Food Program. In terms of the gardens in our schools, it comes down to the growing season. And we often find that it just doesn't match up. It's also volume. you know, a small little garden in a school isn't gonna really help us a lot. But, and when we had the Grow Project, which was coincidentally something I wasn't actually involved in, we did use lettuce and those kinds of things as we can. And one of the things, again, that we're looking to the National School Food Program for is to help us with local procurement so that we can make some really great deals with our local suppliers, to our local farmers, to be able to bring more fresh fruit, locally grown vegetables into our schools. Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Trustee Ritchie.
Thank you for this. I'm just wondering, the new National School Food Project, is that being funneled through the provincial government? So it's not coming federally, like a federal check, provincial check. And so when you alluded to the transparency, so the student nutrition program gives you your primary funding, right, from the government. And then you go out to Limestone, Algonquin Lakeshore gives you funding, and
Yes.
the two Catholic or French boards give you funding as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Breakfast Clubs of Canada, the Loblaws Foundation, and the Metro Foundation. Those are all the areas of funding, right, coupled together along with the United Way. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And very generous donations and fundraising as well too.
And the Community Foundation and
Yeah.
all the grants that Andy
Grants, Churchill
writes.
Foundation.
Right, exactly, all of those. So my wonder is a little bit, so now that the feds are gonna give the province money and they're gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
Will they be looking at all these other foundations that you get money from? And either praise you or say, well, you got some money here, so we won't give you money there. Like, it's gonna be like, do you know what I mean? Like, could that hurt you or could that really help you?
No, I don't think it'll hurt us. So Breakfast Club of Canada, as an example, is a national charity based in Quebec, but they fundraise all across Canada, and they will continue. They work through Student Nutrition Ontario, the part of the ministry that funds us, and they have agreements to keep providing funding, and they'll keep fundraising. They believe in breakfast, they believe in school nutrition, and I anticipate that these organizations will keep on growing their funding initiatives to give back to the community and give back to support. They know there's a shortfall. They know it's a tremendous shortfall. And so I anticipate and donations as well continue to grow.
So there's actually a line in the National School Food Program policy that says nothing can be diminished.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah. The Ontario government hasn't increased their funding for student nutrition since 2014. They're contributing 9 cents per student per day. The national average is 39 cents. So that really needs to come up.
Yes, yeah.
And if some of you might remember the petition process that some of our schools participated in so beautifully to get the advocacy going for the national school food funding. Well, we're going to do a provincial version of it to try to get Premier Ford's attention on that 9 cents. What does 9 cents buy? That's a good visual.
Can I just do a follow-up question as well? Because you live in schools, and when I worked for the program, there was always, where's the Ministry of Education? Where's the partnership between those? Because yes, it's community and community social services, whichever name it is, but it's all going into schools. So there was always where's the partnership here? Because we're getting money from here, but it's going into a different ministry's area, and they get to determine. So when you talk about all your volunteers, nobody has a job description that says you must do the student nutrition program. It's all volunteers, right? And volunteers from schools.
That's right.
Yeah.
School staff are volunteers.
Absolutely.
Although we are now putting more volunteers, our own food sharing trained volunteers, we're putting more in because we need more help to distribute the meals that we're producing. I have never figured out in 30 years why the Ministry of Education isn't part of it. And the last funding that we got through the National School Food Funding through the School Food Infrastructure Fund came from Agriculture.
Agri-Food Canada is a grant for some.
Oh, another ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not education.
Thank you.
Trustee Elliott.
Thank you for the report and the information and for the work that you do with the community. My first question maybe is for Director Burra. I'm just curious, what are the barriers to getting cafeterias up and running again?
Yeah, so I guess through Chair Cocken. The challenge around that is, and more, some of the schools are operating cafeterias more kind of internally, like if they have a food, a culinary program. The primary obstacle in terms of having, like if you were to rewind things 15 years, or even 10 years, then you would have had, say, Browns or Chartwells operating a cafeteria. With PPM 150, which is of course what we had the delegation for in June, and then we spoke about at the board meeting in August. The profit margin for those companies was very much shrinking because of the type of food that they were providing. And the other reality is that around, and we're really talking about secondary schools when we talk about about cafeterias, many of them have other food options directly in the area, and students are voting with their feet.
Yeah.
So PPM 150 was one factor, and then the other factor was just that what they were seeing was fewer sales in schools, and it was not as lucrative as it once was. So we actually don't have food providers who are willing to bid for those contracts right now because it's not something that they believe is profitable.
Thank you. My second question is there overlap between what your organization does and maybe like what Lionhearts does and sort of food redistribution and that sort of thing? Like, is there any way to access volunteers or infrastructure or supplies there?
One of the things that came out of the pandemic was a really well-connected food provider community. And I sit at a couple of tables where we have those conversations, and we try not to duplicate services, but we try to take advantage of services. So for example, we get beautiful donations of apples from I think it's Wind Farms, that's that big bin right there, every fall, and that comes to us through Lionhearts. So we try to do what we can. We have really strict nutritional guidelines that we have to adhere to, which puts us out of the running for a lot of donations that come through, like nothing, like no processed anything, no salt, this amount of sugar, like it's crazy. And so that really ties our hands in some ways, but we certainly make as many partnerships as we can because we're all trying to help our own bottom lines, right? So we take advantage of everything we can.
And so also things like volume, we go through 225 cases of yogurt every week, and it has to be the same supplier every week so that schools can plan ahead and plan their menus and so on. And so Lionhearts, they do contact us when they have product, like the apples, and so we get about 4 or 5 of those skids of apples, which means we don't have to buy them. And so it saves us the money, but the volume of the product that we go through in this and being the same item week after week after week, so the schools can plan around it, doesn't work quite as well. We have a very friendly relationship with Lionhearts, but it's really great for helping small local charities, food providers like Martha's Table and Amidst of all those who have much smaller needs and can be more flexible than we can be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Neal?
Yeah. Have you approached at any time any of the teacher unions for support at EDFO, OECTA, OSSTF?
Yes, we do. Whenever we do a fundraiser, we always do. And I picked up a lovely check from EDFO right at the end of June. So they're right on board. They are so, they're on the ground, they see every day. And they also are the ones, as volunteers in delivering programs, who call and say, I am so sorry that I have to increase my order, but the kids are just so hungry. So they're the ones that see that on Fridays, there's so much more food going out. And on Mondays, the kids are so much more hungry until they see right on the ground every day. So we're well supported through that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Trustee Morning.
Well, 2 questions, and one you can't answer, but do any of our schools have greenhouses? And if they do, could you sort of go through them to get what you think would be needed? Do any of our schools have greenhouses?
So in terms of greenhouses that are operational right now, I don't believe that there are a couple schools that have greenhouses that are kind of equipped that a teacher in the past would run, not that I am aware of currently. That being said, I do know that some of the schools have like herb gardens that they use to help support their culinary arts programs, but the scale of what they're producing is really for internal purposes to help support the culinary arts program as opposed to the food sharing project.
So we don't have greenhouses big enough to help these guys out?
No, and the greenhouses that we have historically had are relatively small.
Yeah.
These are not big production kind of
Gotcha.
farm land.
Great, trustee Lloyd?
So I guess, so you're at 12,000 plus meals or snacks every week right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's not past numbers, but it's still increasing pretty.
Last school year.
That was last school year, okay. I guess, how, have you ever been like, have, when those teachers are saying, you know, there's a major increase, how much of a strain does it put on you? Are you worried at the end of the year? Like, how are you? Like, I don't know your financial situation. I'm just wondering like how tight it gets, because like you said, it's, and I see it every day in my own community. Food insecurity it doesn't look like what it looked like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So how is that impacting you?
It's a worry. It's a huge worry. And we are, we're launching a pretty big funder development plan this year because of that. We had limits on food.
Yeah, once after the pandemic, we had some additional federal funding for a few years, and then it was all of a sudden sort of taken back. And in the meantime, the demand had risen, so we had this sort of gap. So we took stock and we pulled back and we put some limits. You can only have one case of this, one case of this, and we asked schools to help us out a little bit while we got through that year. And when we did that, we looked at diversifying our revenue. So we thought, how can we generate more revenue through fundraisers and different granting opportunities and so on. We brought on, thanks to partnerships from our two big school boards, School Day and Cash Online opportunities, so that parents had an opportunity while they were purchasing an athletic sweatshirt or whatever, they can donate $2 to the food sharing project. So that has been great, another source of revenue. And school board contributions as well too have helped us out. So we've kind of diversified that so that we can meet that need, so we don't have to say no to anybody. But we still have to fundraise. We still have to work with our government partners to try and increase that funding. But we don't ever want to say no to any school if we can help it.
The other
If I just add that too, though, I mean, it was just a couple of years ago that we collaboratively supported the food sharing project with a fairly significant increase with the contributions that we make. And then typically annually, even more than once, probably like twice a year, we'll put in an update out to staff and students that usually it's in the spring, because then at that point you're kind of running out, and indicate, like the 1 in 3 kind of statistic of families are struggling with this, and those families that can contribute, we usually see a bit of an increase in support for the food sharing project at that point in time from staff as well as members of the community.
Yeah, there was a little bump at one point, and Andy texted me and said, "Who died?" Because all of a sudden there was this incredible bump in donations, and Director Burra had included a shout out to food sharing in his monthly update, was it? Something like that. And it was just like magic. It was like pennies from heaven. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was really great.
I just have to follow up. So the lunch, like the full lunches, students need to sign up for that, you said? Is that correct? If so, how many have done that?
So last year when we piloted it, we had an online web store that families or parents could go in and order meals once a week. It was a pilot, so there were lots of learnings. This year we're doing an opt-in program, so all schools will be getting communication in the next week or two. And
Not all schools.
Not all schools, right, yes.
Seven schools.
8 schools.
It's all about capacity.
Right.
It's all about capacity.
Yes. So we have 8 schools that we're piloting it with this year, so they'll be getting communication that they'll be able to opt in for September to December, and there'll be a set menu for those 14 weeks. So the parent only has to sign up once, and then they're on the list, and then we'll have the numbers, and we'll make the meals that way, as opposed to doing it every single week and forgetting, and communication not getting it out, and those kinds of things. So it's an opt-in program this year, and once you're in, you get the meal. You don't have to worry about it.
So, and is that still once a week?
It's still once a week for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
It's based on capacity. We were able to bring all of our staff on full-time in anticipation of the funding from the National School Food Program this year, and so we're really encouraged But again, without knowing exactly how much funding we're getting, it's really hard to be able to go beyond really what we did last year. So we're trying to fine tune it. At Food Sharing, we're famous for doing things that we just need to give it a go and learn as we go and figure it out. And it was really successful, but we, as Andy said, we learned a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Trustee.
Yeah, I was very involved with OSSTF, both locally and provincially. And I have to fess up, the unions are very, very kind of competitive in many ways. And if you were to point out to the unions thanking APCO for making this donation, I think that might nudge some people.
Thank you. Social media shout out to APCO, that'd be great. Thank you for this.
Maybe I missed it. You may have already said, but you mentioned that you're not sure how much money you're getting from the province. Do you know at least roughly when you're getting some amount of money?
No, it's.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's changed so that we have a provincial core funding. We know that, and we know what's been approved for this year, but it's the federal piece on top of it. So there is a federal provincial agreement. You can read it if you want, but it doesn't boil down to, it doesn't say much. It doesn't boil down to who gets the, like how much it boils down to at the end. We were told in April that we might hear in May, and then we might hear in June, then someone else said September, and someone said July, and
someone said we still had to advocate for it, like it was.
Yeah, we don't know.
It was all of them. And I have to shout out to Ted Hsu and Mark Gerritsen for their incredible support at both levels to try to get us the information that we need. And it's just not, there's no transparency at all.
Well, thank you very much. And on behalf of all of my colleagues, your program is very dear to our heart, and very grateful that you come on an annual basis and you talk to us. But I think I speak on behalf of all of us that, you know, please keep us informed throughout the year because we do care, and we do have connections individually and collectively. So, you know, feel free to let us know what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you for your generous time tonight as well.
Thank you. You're all invited. Please come visit the warehouse at some time. I know a few of you have been there in the past to check it out. So if you want to come and have a coffee and take a look at our operation, we would love to have you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. Take good care.
Thank you. All right. I don't know about the rest of you, that it's even hard for me to focus, thinking about the needs that are in our community, and take a deep breath, and we will move on to item 6.3, which is extreme weather. And Director Burrow is going to talk to us about that.
Thank you, Chair Hawken. And just wanted to update trustees simply for a couple of different reasons. Fairly significant amalgamation in terms of public health in eastern part of the province, just from the standpoint that we did have 3 different health units that operated in Eastern Ontario, and they have now been amalgamated. So KFLMA Public Health across the street has been amalgamated with Leeds and Grenville Lanark, as well as with Hastings Prince Edward. And so basically it's all of Eastern Ontario outside of Ottawa that now has been consolidated into one health unit. Second reason why to bring you this report is because we're not seeing necessarily as many extreme temperatures on the cold side. Every once in a while we do get those cold alerts, but we are seeing more heat and humidity alerts that are coming from Environment Canada and then being echoed by public health authorities. And then what I would say is a more recent change, and that also has to do with warming temperatures, is a higher number of air quality days. I can remember now that we've had a couple of those air quality days affecting activities locally in May or June of the last couple of years. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now. It actually altered the Ofsa's soccer schedule in Kingston, and the games that were being hosted at LaSalle Intermediate Secondary and at KSS. And wanting to just bring you some updates because there also have been some changes in terms of what the Southeast Health Unit does as far as warnings are concerned. In the past, when we had very, very, very cold weathers, they put out very kind of clear guidelines about if the temperature is going to be at such and such a threshold, or wind chills are going to be at this temperature, do not go outdoors for recess. They are actually no longer putting that forward as guidance, and so they're stepping out of that role in terms of indicating a specific temperature where that is actually the case. And there are still a couple of authorities that are providing a little bit of guidance in that regard, including the Canadian Pediatric Society, which is what we are moving towards. The other aspect of this was also to kind of set things up for an update from Manager Fowler and Superintendent Young in a couple of weeks at the board meeting, where they talk about some of the summer improvements, and in talking to the chair and vice chair, given the number of calls that we sometimes get, particularly from some school communities in June, I will say mostly, it has to do with concerns about air conditioning. And you may remember even in May, June this year, there was lots of media coverage and statements made by different authorities about whose responsibility it was to make sure that there was air conditioning in schools. And so they're going to provide a little bit of an update around our 10-year capital plan with a particular focus on increasing the number of schools, the footprint of air conditioning in the system, which we are gradually trying to address. I will say that this is not going to be done in 2025, 2026, but we're working towards gradually increasing the number of buildings that have air conditioning operating in them. And the reality is there's much more of a need for it now in 2025 than when any of the adults in the room were attending elementary or secondary school, just in terms of the average temperatures that we're seeing typically in June, although it sometimes can affect September. That being said, I will say, we'll shout out to the weather yesterday and today. It's like perfect weather, warm during the day, cool at night. It's unfortunate we only have 5 days like that a year. So just wanting to bring this to your attention, because I know that this does receive quite a bit of media scrutiny, but also natural concern from families as it relates to what happens on specific school days when temperatures are very high, temperatures are very low, or the air quality is very poor. So I did try to provide you a little bit of a summary related to this. One thing I will highlight is in terms of in the current status, and I just want to add one comment here as it relates to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The Section 129 actually comes from Regulation 851, which talks about industrial establishments, which in the case of schools, the temperature guidance that is under that regulation would also apply to schools. And so for your interest, there is a low temperature point. If the temperature is less than 18 degrees Celsius in a particular space, it's going to be that way for a period of time. I'm not talking about outdoor recess or anything like that, where it might be minus 10 or whatever the case may be, but inside the actual building, then there is guidance that's provided in the Occupational Health and Safety Act through that regulation. Interestingly, as of yet, there's no high temperature threshold that is in place for guidance in terms of schools. That being said, though, as I did say, we do have a responsibility to take responsible precautions to protect all employees as well. And obviously we have responsibility for students in addition to that. So what I'd like to do is just share with you a little bit of the guidance so that you have an awareness. A lot of this will not be new information, but again, I wanted to share this information with you because of the amount of attention it does receive, and also because we'll be focusing a little bit on our air conditioning as part of that next update. I should also add, I know Associate Superintendent Galway would have liked to have been here today, particularly given there was the food sharing project, which she now is the senior staff lead, and this is really her bailiwick, given she has responsibility for the partnership with public health across the street. She's fine, but she does need to be off for medical reasons for a few weeks, and we will be looking forward to welcoming her back in October. And if you're curious, what's happening is retired superintendent Jess Silver will be coming back and doing a little bit of work as her replacement for a little while. And as I always joke with staff, you may think you retired from Limestone, but you actually never really leave, because we'll keep our hooks in you. So you may see or hear from her at some point over the course of the next few weeks. So with that, I do want to provide a little bit of an overview in terms of the guidance that we do receive from public health. And again, I think there's a lot of belief that public health actually continues to give us very strict guidelines. They don't. They give us strategies to mitigate potential harm for whatever weather we might be experiencing. I will say that this is a change since the pandemic. And so I don't know if there's a correlation there in terms of whether there was a lot of vitriol thrown in the direction of public health by the beginning of 2022, but there certainly we're not getting the same clarity of some messaging as it relates to weather like we might have in the past. And that's not that's just a reality in terms of the way things have changed over the course of the last few years. It's not just local, it's across the entire province. So in the past, they do put out a temperature warning around -35. As I indicated in the report, we generally take precautions and look at indoor recess when we hit that Canadian Pediatric Society threshold of temperatures or wind chill that are in excess of -27 degrees Celsius. The number of days that we see with that kind of temperature in 2025, I don't know what the winter's going to look like this year, but generally speaking, these are only a small handful of days. What we're finding is more extreme heat and humidity days than extreme cold weather days, which I would argue is different from when all of the adults in the room were children, where we saw a little bit of a flip-flop in that regard. Obviously, public health, when they put out guidance, it is actually for schools, but it's also for any type of service provider that may be helping support particularly young people, the elderly, or those people who may be more vulnerable to significant temperature variations or weather variations. You will see in terms of the cold weather guidance, these are not surprises. And I will say, just as schools work with the food sharing project, schools also work with a number of other community agencies and also will do some fundraising on their own or use their own money from school council or from money that we give to them to help accommodate those students who may have more financial need in making sure, for example, where covering of exposed skin, if you see a child who's coming to school and they don't have a winter coat and it's -25 or -30, we will try to step in and solve that problem, as opposed to waiting for a child to suffer some kind of frost nip or worse in terms of exposure to the weather. And so certainly, schools are well versed in trying to make sure that they are keeping an eye on those students. We actually have a very small number, but a handful of students who actually have an allergy to cold. So in other words, weather hits a certain point in time, they actually will break out in hives. It's not a very common thing, but you have to have that awareness, whether it's staff or student, in terms of those people who may be more vulnerable in some of those particular types of situations. This is generally not something that we see because when it's really cold, we keep them in, or we know that there's a student who has doesn't have gloves or doesn't have a jacket. We will try to step in and solve that particular problem with the family. Again, around extreme warm weather and guidance, primarily what they refer to is talking about modified or shortened activities outside or moving students indoors. In some cases, I will say in some of our buildings, students being outside on some of those days, maybe a little bit better than actually being indoors if they can be in the shade, simply because there may be a little more air movement outside. And so certainly, and during the pandemic and afterwards, if a class is going to continue their learning, they're encouraged to go outside and do that learning outside if it's appropriate. And certainly that exists on days like this when we see hotter temperatures, but actually it's better outside than it is indoors, assuming that you're actually in the shade. Again, very clear kind of guidance around this, and this is for the most part common sense, but schools do also provide things like sunscreen for those students who don't have sunscreen and are clearly susceptible maybe to being outside. And the goal of this is obviously to avoid situations where students are dehydrated or potentially suffering from heat stroke. But again, this is part of the reason why we're putting water filling stations into schools. You see more and more students with water bottles and encouraging those students, not just to be drinking when they're thirsty, but if it's a really hot day, regularly just kind of continuing to drink during the day, which is a good protection against potentially getting into a situation where they may be dehydrated. But again, this is becoming an increasing problem that we're seeing in school. I also will say this is an increasing issue, and obviously you just need to turn on the news and hear about some of the different forest fires and forest fires having longer seasons than non-forest fire seasons in some particular case. Fire burn bans in many places. You know, the amount of rain that we received in this part of the country over the course of most of July and August. This is a significant concern, and we are seeing air quality being impacted, including even on some school days where, again, it's very similar to the hot weather, modified short activities or moving students indoors. And again, similar to kind of hot weather and cold weather and vulnerabilities, students who may have breathing challenges like asthma, schools really need to know their staff, they need to know their students and be able to keep an eye on those students in those types of situations. But again, these recommendations, come from the Southeast Health Unit across the way. But again, there isn't kind of that threshold of temperatures where, or air quality where they say, you know what, you shouldn't be doing anything at all. The last thing that I want to share with you is, and unfortunately, this is also the reality is, we have to be prepared for very extreme weather now in the form of shelter in place. This could be a huge snowstorm that could like effect that might come in, and you weren't expecting 25, 30 centimeters in a very short period of time. Shelter in place might be appropriate there, but it's essentially where schools have to have a procedure for an emergency situation where you need to keep everybody in the building. It's not because there's like a threat of violence or anything like that. It's simply because of weather extremes. I will say the most common one that we see for this is a gas leak. So there's a gas leak in the neighborhood. They don't want students going outside because, fire department and Utilities Kingston or whoever are going to the scene. You can very clearly smell something in the air. Keep people indoors. We've also seen this with a transport truck that had overturned and there was a bit of a spill. They didn't want students going out of the school. It was just very close to the proximity to a building. You do a shelter in place. Those same procedures also exist, though. For example, if there's a tornado warning and there's a tornado coming through a particular part of the board, or if there were like hurricane types of conditions, you would keep everybody indoors in the school. So I did want to remind trustees that with kind of those extreme weather kinds of events, I'm not talking about kind of high, low temperatures or very smoky air, but also in situations where there's extreme weather, we do have to have emergency procedures due to the weather or the environmental kind of conditions, which could include things like a gas leak or spill to protect students and staff. So again, just want to provide a little bit of overview to trustees, given this is something that pops up from time to time as a concern, and for your awareness in terms of constituents who may have questions or concerns about temperatures or what the guidance is that we receive related to weather and different temperatures. I will also say in a closing comment, just because it's one type of weather in Kingston doesn't mean it's the same weather in Napanee, let alone in Charlotte Lake or in Cloyne, right? The reality is we see huge variation. What might be freezing rain in Kingston might be a huge snowstorm north of the 401. You also see days where we get a huge amount of lake effect snow off of Lake Ontario, and it's a beautiful sunny day, north of Joyceville and north of Harrismith. So again, we have to make weather decisions based on what it's like in the area around a particular area. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for the report. I'd like to give the opportunity to our student trustees first. If you would like to make any comments or share any of your own experiences or ask any questions.
I find that in my area, especially tornadoes are a big deal. Like they come through more often. So we've had a couple shelter in places for them. I can imagine that in like bigger cities that oil spills would be a bigger issue. I've never experienced that though.
Yeah, I remember at our school we had a gas leak, and having these procedures like set in place that really does help give students some peace of mind and know that there's something to rely on in case these things happen.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really good. Trustee Rattan.
Do we have some latitude for, let's say we have a string, which we've had recently, a string of really hot days in June, and the school, let's say, it has maybe one room that has air conditioning, because I think we always have one room that has some sort of air cooling. Sorry if I'm not, but do we give some latitude to parents to say, listen, I'm just not going to send my kids. I've got air conditioning at home. I'm not going to send them into the hot box. So do we have like, yeah, sure, we understand that and we'll accommodate?
If parents are expressing significant concerns and their child maybe has some medical condition that is a bit more of a concern. I mean, parents always have the ability to exercise that particular option. What I will also say, sometimes in June, when secondary students, I was is a bigger issue in elementary than it is in secondary, because towards the end of June, second half of June, secondary students are into exams and end of year. And so typically speaking, for many of those days, they're not in the building every day, or they're in the building for a reduced period of time. They have a morning exam or an afternoon exam, but the elementary students are there all day. And we do see some parents exercise that as an option at the end of the school year, particularly. Again, this is really an issue in June as a primary issue.
Sure. Thanks. Trustee Young.
Thank you for the information. When you Google Limestone District School Board Administrative Procedure Weather, the first link that comes up is a weather guidelines page. And that page actually has extreme heat ranges. Is that still relevant, or is that like an archivable page?
No, I mean, it's still relevant in the sense of these are kind of the things that we kind of aim for. And a lot of that is actually coming from public health in terms of the guidance that they've historically given us. So I'm going to go back and take a look at that to make sure that it actually is still relevant with the lack of direction that we're receiving that is very specific from Southeast Health at this stage.
And my second question is the threats to school safety is Administrative Procedure 141, where it talks about the slide that you had about sheltering in place due to weather, but it's kind of vague. Given that there are some guidelines here, but they're just guidelines, is there room for a policy? Should this be a policy?
Arguably it could potentially be a policy, although I think for the most part it has to do with what staff are directed to do based on the weather circumstances. So it probably makes more sense for it to be kind of a administrative procedure that staff are expected to follow under those circumstances.
Okay. And no other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Moving along, there were under unfinished business. Now under number 8, new business. On my notes here, it's marked as a potential notice of motion, and I would defer to Trustee Boyd. Do we take the potential off, or?
So my understanding is that I'm requesting that this motion be put on the next regular board meeting agenda. I'm asking at EPOC, instead of waiting until the next board meeting and then us waiting a month to send this letter when it's very timely. So it is my request that the board approve this. I think the motion is simple. Trustees are the public's democratic voice in local education. Removing elected trustees won't fix funding gaps or improve achievement. In fact, history tells us the opposite. What will help students is properly funded classrooms, modernized funding formula, a transportation model that works in rural and urban communities, predictable capital funding, clear provincial goals with transparent reporting.
Okay, so, and correct me, there's so many knowledgeable people, but so at this particular point, rather than like speaking, all we need to know is, are you making a notice of motion?
Yeah, for the next board meeting.
For the next board. So correct me if I'm wrong, is that so we don't get into discussion or anything. You've given us that, and so now I've heard that yes, this is your notice of motion, correct?
I just want to clarify, because this isn't a regular board meeting, do I need a motion to put it on the agenda at the next board meeting?
So if I want to speak to that, so we could do it that way, or we could wait until we're talking about the actual agenda at that meeting. One of the things, typically speaking, and again, just according to our bylaws, notice of motion would usually come at a board meeting and would announce it for the following board meeting. All we need to do to expedite that process, if that's the will of the group, is have a vote of 2/3 in favor of expediting the process and putting it on the agenda for the next board meeting. That could either, I guess technically speaking, given this is EPOC and the minutes of EPOC will be approved at the next board meeting, technically speaking, it should happen actually at the board meeting. So I think what you'd be asking for is when we're approving the agenda at the beginning, what we'll have is notice of motion listed at the bottom, similar to the agenda tonight. But I think at that point, you could request at that point that we amend the agenda at that stage and actually have discussion and potential passage of a motion related to that. And we just would need the will of the group in terms of overriding the bylaw and having 2/3 say that, yes, we do want to discuss this and make a decision tonight. And that's all that would need to happen.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was really good. So short to cold no. So I think we're not doing anything until.
We don't need to, we don't do anything tonight. People are aware that this would be coming forward, beginning of the next meeting when we adopt the agenda. We make a request to actually have this be a topic for not just a notice of motion, but a topic for discussion and potential decision. We take a vote to amend the agenda. If that's approved, then it's on the agenda for discussion and potential decision.
Do we all agree? Any objections? Then that's what we will do. And thank you for bringing it forward. All right. So then correspondence, I don't believe we have any. Our next EPOC meeting is October the 1st. Sounding fallish now. So at this particular juncture, I'm looking for a trustee to move a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Trustee Lloyd. And anybody not in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objections, we're adjourned. And thank you all for immediately.